Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan, and I'm absolutely delighted to have with me a dear friend and colleague, Jon Atack. John's over in Nottingham, England, and he and I go way back to the late 80s in our friendship. Jon is renowned as one of the leading authorities on Scientology. He authored a book that Scientology tried to block all the way to the Supreme Court. Let's Sell Them a Piece of Blue Sky. He's a novelist. He's a drummer and musician. He's an artist. He's a Renaissance man. He's got a better brain and memory than anyone I know. And he's just completed a new edition or an updated edition of his book that's called Opening Our Minds. And the subtitle is Avoiding Abusive People and Authoritarian Groups. Jon, I wanted to do this because I want more people to know about you and your YouTube channel and all your good works. Take it away. Tell us about your work.
Yeah, well, you and I both started, out being abused by a destructive cult group, and we came out of that. We were both about, I think, 19 when we got involved. We started out, similarly. We both left an abusive authoritarian group, found out about that group, then found out there were other groups, and then found out about the psychology that goes into this, and that the same sort of techniques and tactics are used. We both then expanded that into looking at gangs, terrorist groups, human trafficking, pedophile grooming, and found that the same psychology applies. So we worked out ways of talking to people who fanatically believe things, and in a day or a few days, getting them to reconsider their view, getting them to think about it again. And I stopped doing direct intervention work in about 1995 and moved more into the wider field to understand what's in common between these things. I've come down to various fairly simple formulations, the first of which is about human predators, that we've got all sorts of names for such people: psychopaths, sociopaths, Machiavellians, malignant narcissists, antisocial personalities. But our concern is not to diagnose which type of predator we're dealing with, but that we're dealing with somebody who is predatory. And such people have fairly straightforward characteristics when you go through the literature. You and I set about, creating a foundation to do something about this some years ago, with the idea that what we'd learned about fanatics and how to help them was something that should be taught in schools. It's something that's should be freely available on YouTube. And a couple of years back, my son Sam and I started a YouTube channel, Jon Atacks Family and Friends, and put up material that is useful for anyone, that's easy to get your head around, along with a lot of interviews with luminaries such as yourself and quite a lot of other people. Now we've just clocked up 278th video.
Wow.
Crazy. But teaching what the techniques are, how advertising propaganda lures people in, how salespeople use various tricks, which is all common material. I think the point I'd like to make today is that for the last 20 something years, I've been trying to get this material into the de-radicalizing world. And although I've had applause at events with the Radicalization of Awareness Network in Europe, at Exit, the counter-extremist group, I was asked by Prevent to go and work for them, which is the UK body. Nobody wants to take this up, or nobody has taken this up, that in fact we could probably put a program out that would cut down recruitment massively, just by showing kids what, how somebody love bombs you, how somebody gets in next to you and gets you to comply with what they want to do. So this is a book that covers all of the topics of coercion, coercive control, and offers, hopefully some light on what we might do about that, which, I'm you and I have been working together on projects for years now, so we're both familiar with all of the work that's in there.
No, I'm very excited about this book, and it will be an audio book. It will be on a variety of platforms. But just to highlight, it's really preventing someone from getting harmed is so easy compared to intervening, trying to figure out how to get to the person, reach the person, get them to reevaluate and recover after sometimes years. There's such a good investment of time and energy for governments, for states, for nonprofit, philanthropic foundations that really want to sustain freedom and human rights around the world. These are universals for how to protect ourselves, how to identify predators, and real, practical advice.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
thumbs up.
Thank you. It's said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, but that's a tremendous underestimate. An ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. It in a day, less than a day, you can get somebody, so it's very unlikely they'll be recruited. But it'll take you maybe 10 years to get somebody through a full recovery from a really traumatic experience. So it's well worth investing in this. It's
And
also
no, go ahead.
I was just going to bounce to the next point, which is that really our work comes down to being anti-authoritarian. That there are people who think they should be in charge because they think they have superior insight. They believe themselves to be gods in some way, and they're who are bullies, and they become tyrants, dictators, gurus, leaders of authoritarian groups of one kind or another. And then there are the people who feel that they've got to be told what to do. And one source after another, Schopenhauer, Eric Fromm, Milgram, more recently Jane McGregor at Nottingham, say about 60% of people want other people to tell them what to do. And so I figure if we can move it across the line, so 51% of people can make up their own minds, we have a chance at true democracy. Earlier this week, the week we're talking, Joe Biden said we have a choice between autocracy and democracy. And I agree. And I'm with the Hong Kong protesters that we need to be pro-democracy. We don't need to be left and right and caught up in all of these silly things. We need to be concerned about autocracy, about authoritarians telling us what to do and taking away our rights, which is happening in our society progressively since 9/11, that our rights are being taken away.
Exactly. So, but what's good about this book, because I saw proof of it, is that it's easy to read, easy to understand, well written, good examples, but it doesn't put up any roadblocks to the average person picking it up and reading it like they would, with a book like The Cult of Trump. I'm not going to read that junk, because I believe in Donald Trump. This is just a generic, hey, be aware. Here's how the mind works. Here's how social discourse and interaction works. Here's healthy. Here's unhealthy. Here's how to protect yourself. So I wish you an incredible amount of success and hope you sell 1 million copies. And it leads to developing curriculum for governments. And because this work can be, expanded and applied and fleshed out to help, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, to help people who are in multi-level marketing groups or in a controlling relationship or anything really that is undermining a person's conscience, integrity, ability to make decisions with a internal locus of control.
Yeah, which is what you and I have been working towards. What, about 40 years now or something?
Yeah, and we need more people to get involved. We want to invite more former members who care and are at a point where they're willing to share their story, to be more public about it, to try to destigmatize, the fact that, yep, we were lied to and we were put through a systematic social influence process that infringed on our ability to think for ourselves and make our own independent decisions. And there's life after. Much better.
Oh yeah, and how? Yeah,
So,
and I mean,
so a shout out to igotout.org.
I
Yeah,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say that you and Mark Laxer had put together the I Got Out idea, which is great. So,
Yep.
so that we don't have to lurk in the shadows and be ashamed that we're among probably the majority of the population who've been conned and taken in and led down the garden path. You know?
I think so. I know that back in the 70s when I would do a public speech and I would ask, who's ever been recruited by a cult, very few hands would go up, or who's, in a cult. But over the years, more and more hands go up. And then when I add in things like multi-level marketing, oh, a lot of hands go up. Or in a controlling relationship with a man or a woman who is taking you over and isolating you from family and friends, more hands. So I totally agree with you. I think there's way more people who've experienced this firsthand. Not everybody stays for 10 years or 20 years with an abusive group. I was fortunate my family intervened after 2.5 years. When they found me, they didn't even know where I was, and I nearly died. But most people walk out, and then, of course, the issue is how to help the people who walk out understand what happened to them so that they don't get vulnerable to the next recruiter or the next recruiter.
And I've really taken, I've worked with about 600 people in recovery, and that shows you how people are taken over so that you can then go back and look at prevention and say, well, watch out for these things. And it's written into our society. I mean, I'm working on a curriculum that will go into schools here at the moment. We're just at the beginning of that. But
That's great.
schools themselves have to look at whether they are being authoritarian, because when we're born we're utterly dependent, but by the time we're 18 we should be able to make decisions. And I fear that the process in schools is not, it's too much obedience based. It's not enough getting people to take responsibility. And so it also is, we have a society that looks towards narcissism as a goal, that you're going to have a lot of stuff and people are going to look up to you and you have status and all of this stuff, which is not really very helpful to society. It'd be better to, the Plains Indians had this, the Native Americans had this thing that whoever shot the most buffalo would have to give them away. So they had a culture of generosity, where we have a culture of, well, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg, of incredible accumulation. It's what Hannah Arendt called them, the much too rich. She said, in the society we have the much too rich and the much too poor. And to get past authoritarianism, we have to redistribute power in the society, not in a kind of socialist or communist way, but just so that the very rich don't have that amount of power, or indeed nobody has that amount of power, that there is democracy, that we all have a right to consensus and collaboration in our society, and that kids look at that as being a great thing rather than, having a Rolls Royce, a Cadillac, and at their own private island as being the objective of life, but actually doing something that helps society being the objective of life. So
I completely agree with you. So I want to thank you again for this incredible life effort of giving, giving, giving. You've been writing generously, especially with about Scientology, wanting people to understand things that most people don't. Like Hubbard was a hypnotist. He wrote a brilliant thing about never believe a hypnotist. Right from on Hubbard. People need to understand this stuff, and we'll make a better world together. So thank you, my friend.
yeah, thanks so much, Steve.
Continued success.
Yeah, and to you. Goodbye.